I get a lot of DMs on Instagram on how to shoot interior photographs. So I'm gonna show you how to do it in today's video. Today we're talking about how to shoot and edit interior photography. I'm shooting this video in this bedroom today because we just finished it and we shot that video and some photos. So I thought, hey, like what better opportunity than to shoot this video for you guys in this room. Everyone kind of has a niche in photography. When we all start out, we take a number of different types of jobs. As you grow as a photographer, you kind of realize what you really like and what you really don't like. Something I really loved was interior photography. When I lived in Newfoundland, I had a number of clients who were in that realm. Most of my clients were either real estate agents or interior designers, so I got to shoot their properties and in turn get inspired for the house, which is very exciting. Anyway, real estate was my niche and I loved it. Today I'm going to show you guys how to shoot interior photography the way I shoot it. A lot of you guys have asked, you know, like how do you light your rooms? I actually don't. I use all natural window light. For me, I want the room to look as close to what the eye sees as possible, so I do multiple exposures on a tripod, and that's how I prefer to shoot my photos. I have seen people use flash, I've seen people use constant lights. Before we get into this, let's talk about gear. This is like the number one question. What lens do you use for your interior shots? I'm using a Canon 16 to 35mm f2.8 lens on a Canon 5D Mark III. So that is a wide angle rectilinear lens on a full frame camera. It's not a fisheye, so it doesn't have a lot of distortion. There is some, we do have to adjust for that in Lightroom later. I find this is the best focal range to get everything in the shot, and a lot of you guys have been asking what lens is my favorite for interiors. That is it. If you were shooting on a crop body or APS-C sensor, I like to recommend 10 to 22mm or 10 to 20mm on an APS-C sensor, and then I shoot my detail shots with a 50mm f1.2 lens. Any lens that has a bit of depth of field. I like to mix it up between getting the wide shots of the room so everyone can see it, and then these little moments in the room, little detail shots. And interior designers, sometimes if you're working with one, they've put together these little vignettes, so why not feature them? All of the wide shots, I usually like to shoot around f8, so I can get almost everything in focus, where the detail shots I'd like to shoot anywhere between f1.2 to f2.8, depending on how much of the detail I want to get in focus. And you're also going to need a tripod because we are shooting multiple exposures, because we're shooting at f8, and because we're using natural light, our shutter speed is going to be pretty slow. We want to shoot around ISO 100. Sometimes I go above that if I'm shooting a bathroom where there's not a lot of natural light. There's a couple of tips you guys need to keep in mind if you want professional looking photographs. First thing is keystoning. If your vertical or horizontal lines are like this or like skewed, they're not straight, that's the biggest telltale sign that it was not done by a professional photographer. It's a very easy fix. The easiest way to do it is get it as close as you can in camera, and then you can tweak it up in Lightroom or Photoshop later. There's actually a function in Lightroom where you can automatically adjust the perspective of the shot, and usually it does a pretty good job. Sometimes I have to bring it into Photoshop and adjust it. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I shoot multiple exposures of my room. I set my camera up on a tripod and I shoot 3 exposures, one for the highlights, one for the shadows, and one for the midtones, and of course I'm shooting raw. That is super important. There's a lot of dynamic range in the shots, especially if the room is dark. So you have a big bright window, you might have some shadows over here. I try to capture it all in 3 images and then I blend them in post later. Most of the time, because I'm shooting raw, I am able to use the middle exposure and just adjust the highlights and shadows, but sometimes we have a shot that has too much dynamic range, and so it's nice to have that safety net of multiple exposures that we can blend in later. So when I pop my photos in Lightroom, I've got 3 shots here. They're the same shots because I've shot them on a tripod, all at different exposures. So this one is exposed for the shadows are bright, but we got a lot of blown out highlights. This one over here, we have the highlights are preserved, but the shadows are very dark, and then we have the midtones. So I'm just going to select all of these and merge them into one photo in Lightroom. And then once I've done that, I can adjust the shadows and highlights and edit to the way I like it. The key here though is to make it not look too obvious. That's like it's an HDR photograph. Sometimes they can have this like weird shadow highlight, high clarity look, which we don't want. We want it to look as close to natural as possible. Okay, in terms of tripod height, you want to look through the back of the camera and make sure that everything looks you know, good. You don't want it to be too low where you're just seeing the bottom of the furniture, but you also don't want it to be too high where you have all sorts of ceiling in your shot. So a mid height, I usually do kind of chest height, see how that looks depending on the height of the ceiling, if there's ceiling detail we want to capture, how much of the floor we want to capture, is there a beautiful rug, is there a couch in the foreground. Use your discretion as you're shooting. It will vary by room, but generally I do about chest height. In terms of angle, I like to find the corner of the room that I feel personally looks best. That's highlighting the features of the room. I like that look, but I also really like shooting straight onto things. So, you know, if there's a kitchen and a beautiful long island, I'll shoot straight onto that. So that's what I like to call like a flat angle. And then we have the corner angle that works really well too. You can get creative with the interior shots. So if you're gonna shoot an angle, just make sure it's an obvious, interesting kind of angle. So this one I shot through the mirror. It's not straight, but I think it works. This shot of my stairs back in St. John's, not a straight shot, but it's kind of looking down at an angle. It kind of adds some interest. It's a little more artsy. Real estate agents probably won't want that look if they're trying to show a home the way it looks, but if you're shooting for an interior designer or for Instagram, don't be afraid to get a little bit, I don't know, artsy with the shots. It's a lot of fun. The details are just as important as the wide room shots. We'll use this bedroom for example. We've got a corner room shot, straight lines, no keystoning, and that's my wide room shot. Then I've got some detail shots, shallow depth of field of candles and books, things like that. Another key to shooting beautiful room shots is to make sure that things are clean and neat and tidy. There's nothing worse than going into a room that's messy and you're trying to shoot it. There's pillows are looking sloppy and there's mess and garbage and dust. Sometimes the way things look in person doesn't always translate well on camera, so you may have to like adjust furniture so that it looks better through the lens. You know, maybe pulling or pushing chairs in, moving the table around. It may not be centered in person, but it might look centered on the camera. So keep that in mind. You might have to do some staging and some moving around. Oh my God, okay, the light just changed and now there's weirdness on me, so I'm going to leave you. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when we post new videos. We will see you in the next one.